Thanks for joining us for this panel, which is part of our Career Exploration webinar series. Today's discussion is titled Career Exploration for Girls and Women Therapy, and it focuses on the career paths and experiences of women who have professional careers being therapists. I'm Dr. Susan Madsen, founding director of the Utah Women in Leadership Project, and also I'm the Karen Hay Huntsman Endowed Professor of Leadership in the John M. Huntsman School of Business at Utah State University. And I'm the host and will be the panel moderator today. Our career exploration webinars further the mission of the Utah Women in Leadership Project, which is to strengthen the impact of Utah girls and women. So first, I'd like to just thank our sponsors quickly, the Utah Education Network, UEN, the John M. Huntsman School of Business, and USU Extension. To get us started, I would like to introduce our three panelists and ask each of them why they chose to focus their careers on therapy. So I'm going to start first with Dr. Megan Oka, who is a licensed marriage and family therapist and earned her degree from Texas Tech University. Although she has extensive training in therapy for adults, couples, and families, she chooses to specialize in children and their parents. She practices in Cache and Utah Valleys. Dr. Oka incorporates creativity into her children and family therapy sessions as a way to spark change. So I'd like you to first answer the question, why did you choose to focus your career as a therapist?
Well, I knew very, very early on, I was a junior in high school when I decided that I wanted to be a therapist, which I think is fairly unusual. I think most of the people that I've worked with over the years have taken a little bit longer to get there, but I really am fascinated by relationships. And I think if you look at like a Myers-Briggs personality profile of the difference between somebody who wants to be a therapist and just, wants to study people, I think there's sort of that piece of, I think I have something to bring to the table in terms of, I think I can offer people something that they can't get on their own. And that's really why I've been passionate about therapy for so long, and particularly therapy at the family level, whether it's couples or whether it's parents and children, or even sometimes individuals sort of working through the stuff from the families that they grew up in. I feel like family relationships really mold us and shape us and define us in a lot of ways, and for better and for worse. And so I'm really passionate about helping people sort of understand those relationships that are so formative to their lives.
That's awesome. You knew that in high school, because I do think that's unusual. So you must have had an example or something where you saw that was an option, or somebody told you that. So to even get that in your mind.
I would say I knew that therapists were a thing, and I knew that psychology was a thing. It probably took me another year in college to figure out that I wanted to be a marriage and family therapist, and that there was a route to studying families and studying relationships, because I like I said, in high school, I'd taken a psychology class and I was like, not that interested in Freud. I'm not that interested in the personality components. But I took a family studies class when my second year, and really fell in love with the idea of family patterns and the stuff that you bring in from your family of origin. And I was like, oh, this is it. This is what I want to do.
Thank you so much. Dr. Cynthia Palacios-Gutierrez earned her doctorate in psychology from the Chicago School of Professional Psychology in Los Angeles. And she has worked with children and families in state programs, private practice, and nonprofit organizations. She specializes in preschool age children who have experienced physical, sexual, emotional abuse. And she currently works for the Children's Center Utah as their professional development manager. And so I think that your field, Cynthia, is just so interesting and so important. Why did you choose to focus your education and career as a therapist?
I think that's interestingly, mine's also started in high school.
Oh.
So I think it was when I first took I took a psychology course in high school and was just really intrigued at the idea of understanding the complexity of human behavior and why individuals behave the way that they did. I also had a personal loss to suicide and mental health, and that helped kind of push me more into prevention. And really understanding the impact of mental health on individuals' functioning. And then when I got to college, I decided to take more psychology courses and made it one of my majors along with child studies. And so that's how kind of I fused my interest in working with children and then my interest in psychology. Because at the heart was really like prevention and how can I prevent mental health problems from continuing to develop into adulthood. And the earliest, the earlier we can intervene, the better. And so that's how I got into the field of trauma and knowing that children in, prenatally and in those early years really are already experiencing traumatic events. And so how can we help family systems then, or that parent and child relationship really kind of buffer those effects that those traumatic experiences have on these children in the really early years. So prevention then became my passion. So yeah.
Thank you so much. And the Children's Center is amazing. I know your CEO, and she's just amazing. And it's amazing. I don't think most people think that there's therapy from kids 0 to 5 years old. I don't think that's on anybody's radar. And and I know you all have such a waiting list even. So it's something that's real common. And it's sad, but what an interesting area to focus and important, Cynthia.
Yeah, I don't think people realize that on average, when we get like a 2-year-old or a 3-year-old that walks through our door with their parents, like they've already experienced an average of like 2 to 3 traumas. And so then being able again to do that work with the parents and help them understand that, yeah, your child, some of the behaviors you're seeing with your kiddo is really based on their previous experiences that they've had that has impacted the way that they move through the world. So
thank you so much. Dr. Julie Hanks is a licensed clinical social worker, coach, speaker, college teacher, digital content creator, and author. I've known Julie we were just talking before, for 10 plus years. She has been counseling women, couples, and families for 28 years. Currently, she is the owner and executive director of Wasatch Family Therapy. Dr. Hanks earned her Master of Social Work from the University of Utah and her PhD in Marriage and Family Therapy from the University of Louisiana at Monroe. Why did you choose to focus your education and career as a therapist?
My journey started when I was 14 and I didn't understand what was going on inside of me. I just knew something wasn't right. And my parents said, "We don't know how to help you." And so they said, "Do you want to go talk to somebody?" And luckily I said yes. And so at 14, I started my own personal journey to understand my internal world, my thoughts, feelings, and behaviors. And so that really, my own experience in therapy was the catalyst that got me thinking, wow, this was so life-changing for me. I want to do this for other people. And then I took high school and college classes in sociology, psychology, and it just really resonated with me. I'm also from a large family. There are 9 children in my family, and I was really curious, like, how can we all be so different when we're from the same family? And so I had this curiosity about human nature from pretty early on. So it was those experiences. And then also my own journey of trying to figure out, like, how do I become an adult woman that my daughters want to grow up and be like? And so I started working with children actually, and then I realized, wow, if the moms and the couples are doing well, the kids do a lot better. So I kind of shifted my focus to working with women and relationships.
Thank you so much. So to those who are listening in, you're welcome to put questions into the chat in Zoom through the presentation, through our discussion today, and the panelists can answer them along the way, or we'll have a few minutes at the end. So my next question is, what types of careers are available for therapists? And Cynthia, I'd like to start with you and then go to Julie and Megan.
I think so I have a degree in psychology. I have a doctorate in psychology. And I think for me, like the beauty of working in therapy and having a psychology degree is that it really is very flexible. It just depends on the specialty that you choose to go down. And specific to, like psychology, you can be like a sports psychologist and help with like understanding group dynamics and how to improve functioning in that setting, or individual performance in sports. You can do that. I had a professor of mine who actually worked with boxers and kind of was looking at their pre-functioning prior to concussion and then after concussion, and how that impacted their functioning. So I think that there is a lot that you can do with it, again, just depending on the degree that you go, that you obtain to do different things. So when you're talking about therapy and how to improve, I think, human functioning, you can do a lot with that, either on an individual level, on a family systems level, or in a group setting.
Thank you so much. Julie, and then Megan.
Yeah, so my master's in social work, I chose because it's so broad. So with a degree in social work, you can work as a school social worker, you can work as a hospital social worker, you can do private practice therapy, you can work with trauma. There's just a variety of avenues that you can use. You can also work at a community level or a policy level. So there are lots of different levels to intervene. And so I really like that about social work, that it's so broad. I chose to focus on the psychotherapy aspect in private practice. And but there are a lot of different things you can do. And you need to have at least a master's degree in order to be a therapist. I think that's important for people listening to know that although all three of us have PhDs, you can practice as a therapist as a master's level clinician. You don't necessarily have to get a PhD unless you want to be a psychologist like Cynthia, and then you do need to have a PhD.
Thank you so much. And I before I go to Megan, I just want to make this statement that there is such a need, especially in Utah, but I would say probably in any state. I mean, there is such a need, and I don't think maybe you'll disagree, probably not though, but I don't think the need is going to decrease. I think the need, Megan, you could talk a little bit about that, but there's such a need for people to go into these fields, especially at that master's degree level. Megan.
I would say right now, it's this funky two-edged sword. It's a really good time to be a therapist, especially starting out your career, because everyone I know, every private practitioner, every agency I know is looking to hire therapists. And so it's an employee's market right now. And that's, great if you're coming into the profession. If you are a person seeking mental health services right now, it's a little dicier because every therapist I know has a wait list, unless they open up a practice and then they get full really fast and then they have a wait list. But I've worked for 12 years in universities, and so I've seen a lot of trainees, a lot of students come through, and I've seen them in places like eating disorders clinics or residential inpatient treatment for addiction. I have some working in community health centers or community mental health centers, oftentimes working very closely with prescribers and doctors and nurses. I have a lot of students who work for a couple of years under somebody else's license, get licensed, and then start their own private practices in places like rural Wyoming or southern Utah, or various places where they can make a really good living, or places that they end up because a partner is in a certain place, or they've got kids that are in high school. I think mental health, especially like I would say now, affords particularly women, I think, a lot of options in terms of flexibility about their schedules, about where they want to live. I've had a lot of students think that they wanted to go the academic route and be a professor and train students, train therapists themselves. Some of them do that. Some of them look at the academic life and go, I'm not sure that's for me. But a lot of
it seems easy for some people, but if you're engaged, it's not an easy route.
Well, and I think they see that. I think this is a whole other tangent, but I think sometimes university faculty don't make their lives look that good, and the students go, I think I'm going to do something else.
That is so interesting. One quick thing before I move on to the next question. So just last month, I was doing a webinar. We did a whole bunch of community conversations for women of color. And one of the things we published 6 2-pagers on what surfaced. And one thing that was surfaced in every single one, we did 6 different, well, we did 11, but 6 different reports, was how hard it was for them as like a Hispanic woman, a Latina, or an Asian woman to find mental health professionals who are their own race, and how they felt like it was really hard. It took them, this is what they said, it takes so many sessions to even get a white woman or a white man, especially, then you have race, to even get some of the issues. Anybody have, I'm off track a little bit, but anybody have a comment on that? We need to encourage more women of color, right, to go into these fields, probably men of color too, but we're talking about women here. You agree, Cynthia?
Yeah. I do agree. I was going to say, and I think the tricky part, I mean, coming from, so I grew up in Connecticut, in the East Coast. And I know that like, it was hard to even have like what we're doing right now, this panel of like, I didn't see people of color in the higher education field in Connecticut, where, I mean, I think that there's a mixture of different races and classes and things like that, but it was hard. And so when you don't have mentors or you don't have people that you identify with kind of paving the way, it's hard for you to say, okay, well, then how do I figure this out? But if you're, you know, like sometimes you're just driven to figure out, well, I'm going to figure it out either way. There's also financial, I think, barriers that kind of get in the way of making that an opportunity. You just don't have the financial, like supports to get a doctorate, let alone like even a bachelor's degree. Sometimes I know that there's scholarships and opportunities that way, but you have to be kind of creative in finding ways to help fund those opportunities, or you just say, you know what, I'm going to have loans that I'm going to need to sign off on so that I can get there. But then you go into this whole student loan debt, and that's a whole other avenue of conversation.
Thank you so much, Julie. I want to jump with and have you start this next question. So we're in a, you know, high school young women and maybe freshmen in college or sophomores maybe listening in. What associates or bachelors or masters, you already talked about a master's of social work, what would you quickly recommend? We'll go through this round pretty quick, and then I'll go over to Megan.
Yeah, one thing I want to make sure that people watching know is that if you get your bachelor's in social work, you can do an advanced standing master's that takes only 1 year instead of 2 years. So in 5 years, you can become a therapist. So 4 years for your bachelor's and then 1 more year for your master's. So that's something that a lot of people don't realize because they think, oh, you know, it's going to be 10 years. No, you can actually do it in 5 years if you go the social work route. Otherwise, most masters are at least 2 years.
Thank you so much. Oh, yeah.
I'm like, did I answer your question?
I think so. I mean,
okay.
Is psychology, is sociology, are those the best backgrounds for if you, especially if you want to do that bachelor or that master's degree? Are they the best backgrounds, or are there other things that might be helpful?
Yeah. So social work, sociology, psychology, family studies, anything with that, you know, in the social sciences is really helpful, but you don't have to have a bachelor's in social sciences to get a master's in a therapy field. And some people don't know that. You may have to go back and do some prereqs, but if you have a bachelor's in dance, you can still become a therapist. You just have to do a little bit of prereqs. So don't rule it out if you already have your bachelor's and you're thinking you want to become a therapist.
That's a great tip. Megan.
Yeah, I would echo what Julie says, that you can come in, you will, in most programs, you have to do a few prerequisites. if you don't have a degree in social sciences. But some of my favorite students that I worked with over the years did not come from a social science background. I've actually worked with a lot of former collegiate athletes, and they're some of the most fun people to work with because they've really thought through a lot of the student psychology stuff, because they're so ingrained in that world of you have to be the best, you have to be successful, you have to be all of these things. And they also really understand a lot of the relationship pieces from being on teams for so many years. And so I would definitely say if you're thinking about a career in therapy, it's good to take some social science classes to just get your feet wet, but you don't have to be a social science major.
Thank you so much. And Cynthia, if you would answer that too, but also move into the next question. Can your career be family friendly?
Yeah, so I mean, I think because there's so much flexibility in the therapy world, I think that it absolutely can be family friendly. I'll answer the first piece to that, which was, what do you need in terms of a degree? And I think I echo what everybody else has said. I think it's helpful to get your feet wet into some of those social sciences so that you can even see if that's something that you're really liking and enjoying. And then from there, kind of as you're taking different social sciences, or you have other experiences, you can figure out a way to kind of build that bridge between those areas, because like I said, psychology is just so diverse in terms of its applicability. And then when it comes to that family friendly, I think it does, especially if you're going into like private practice, then you can make your own hours. I think as a field, we probably still have a lot of growing to do into the supports that we can offer for like maternity leave or paternity leave. But I think that we're starting to recognize that, at least in the state of Utah, to start to add some of that.
Thank you. Megan, I'll go over to you on the family-friendly piece, but also I'm going to bluntly ask you, like how much around, you don't have to divulge your own salary, but the broad, and I'm wondering if what you decide to go into, like sports psychology or whatever determines that, like what can people expect to make?
That is a really good question. I think for an entry level, it really depends. I have supervisees who are working in places like clinics where they're working full time and they're making somewhere around between $40,000 and $50,000 a year starting out. I have others that are doing more like a fee for service kind of thing where they make like a $50 an hour, depending on, how many hours of therapy they're doing a week. So I've heard of people, I've heard of people walking away and getting jobs in like really desirable, I have a former student who speaks Spanish and got a job making, I think, about $65,000 a year as a master's level clinician because they really wanted him in that location to be able to speak Spanish. So some of it is just sort of dependent on the location. Again, if you're working in a more rural place, a lot of times they have incentives and they try to, like, the housing's more affordable, and then also they'll pay you more to get you to come work in some of these agencies. So I would say it really depends, but I think especially if you're looking for full-time work, the salaries right now are pretty competitive because there's such a need in every community for mental health. In terms of the family friendly aspect of it, again, it kind of depends on where you want to work. I will say a couple of the big things that have changed in marriage and family therapy in the state of Utah. The licensing laws have changed, where it used to be you had 3 years post degree to get licensed, and they've extended that, and they don't have a limit on that. And that for a long time was barring a lot of like young moms, people that were going back for non-clinical PhDs where they weren't working in the field and having to go to the licensing board and going, I can't get licensed. And now that has changed, where people can really go at a much slower pace and still get licensed. The other thing I would say that's changed it a lot is the pandemic, because I think pre-pandemic, most mental health professionals were saying, I don't want to do teletherapy. Like, that's not a thing that I'm ready to do.
They had to.
And then all of a sudden we had to, and all of a sudden the laws around that are, all of the states are going, oh, well, we have all these strict laws about who can see who across state lines, we might actually be able to open some of that up. And that's, I think, for particularly for people with families, I think that's changed a lot, where, you know, now it's a lot easier to work from home. It's a lot easier to not have to go into an office again, to work across state lines and be able to get licensed. All of that has been a game changer. Sorry.
Yeah, and I was going to say too, I know a couple of therapists that really, they have some little children at home, and so they just choose to work certain hours when they and people need them to. So some of them work, you know, maybe take three or six clients each week or something. So I think there's some great flexibility. Julie, I'll have you pitch in a little bit here, and then we're ready to close and take just a couple of questions. So love to, after Julie, is to have each of you just, how could you, like, what are the reasons you would convince young women who are listening to this to go into your field? Julie.
So do you want me to start with that question, or kind of my thoughts on the previous one?
A few thoughts from the last question.
There are administrative jobs you can move into where you can make six figures in a private practice setting. You can make, you can make decent money as a therapist. So some people, especially in social work, think, oh, it's really on the low end. It doesn't have to be. And so I don't want that to scare people, like, oh, there's no hope for for having the lifestyle that you might want. So yeah, and like in a private practice setting, some people make, 75 on up per hour. So that's really good money. So don't feel discouraged just because, you might start at 40 or 50. There's that potential there. So I just want to make sure that that's clear. Okay, why people should go into this field?
Yes.
I love the diversity, as you pointed out. Like I've taught, I own a business, I own a private practice, I do therapy, I do coaching, I write books. There's so much you can do to make a difference for people's lives. It's not just limited to therapy. And so my education has allowed me and opened doors to do so many other fun things and meet people and help in different ways, like educating. So there's so much more than just the one-on-one or family-on-one therapy that you can do. There's also mentoring opportunities. I'm really passionate about mentoring other women. And so there's supervision opportunities. So I just think, the sky's the limit. If you go into this field, you can be creative and you can create the kind of professional life that you want. And that's why I think it's such a great field.
I love that. There really are a lot of choices. Cynthia, I would love to have you go next.
Yeah, I mean, I would agree with what Julie was saying. I think for me, it's really important, and I would encourage women to consider a career in the field of psychology, because I think it teaches you a lot, not only about how to work with other people and about relationships and prevention, but to me, it also teaches me about myself and how I interact with others and kind of where I need to do more growing. And how, yes, I have all of this knowledge base, and some, may consider me an expert, but at the end of the day, like the person that's walking in my office is the expert on themselves, their child. And I really take that into perspective because I don't know a lot about how they're moving through the world. I have like a glimpse of them in a 60-minute window, and I can't make a lot of judgments off of that. And so I think that we learn from each other. So therapy in and of itself is this like co-exchange and we learn off of each other. So I find the work very fulfilling. And it's nice to see, especially again, because I'm starting from that early prevention age, kind of how the dynamics change within that family setting, and what they take away from therapy if they, if they are coming consistently. So it's nice to see the growth that individuals and family units make.
Thank you so much. And Megan.
I would say one of the things I love most is that every day is different. And I think every day is different because we're working with people and people are different. every day. And I think that's one of the things I love so much about this profession is getting to work with people and getting to watch them change over time, but also just sort of, I don't know, it's such a I don't know, a humbling experience. I would even say almost a spiritual experience. People let you into their lives, even for just a brief period of time. That it's a really precious experience to be able to work with people and have them share their stories with you, have them be vulnerable with you, and to tell you this is the thing that I'm struggling with, and I recognize that I need help. I can't do it on my own. And that's I would echo what Julianne, what Cynthia have said, because I think you learn so much about yourself in that, in recognizing, oh, am I doing what I'm asking my clients to do? If I'm asking my clients to be vulnerable with me, am I vulnerable with other people? If I'm asking my clients to give up things that they've been holding on to that aren't helpful for them anymore, am I willing to do the same thing? And I think I'm constantly looking at myself going, what do I need to be doing better? What do I need to change?
That's good. Probably most of the time. It seems like that would be hard in other ways too. Okay, we have a lot of questions, but I'm going to give each of you just one, so we won't all three answer each one. So grab one that you would like to answer. Here's the first one I'll ask. Is being a therapist emotionally challenging? Or can it be? Who wants to jump in on that one? Julie.
It's definitely emotionally challenging. And that's actually the most common question I get from potential therapists. Like, how do you handle it emotionally? Hearing people's struggles and working with people who are disenfranchised. And so, I've had to learn emotional boundaries, like really strong emotional boundaries, and know what my limits are, and recognize that I'm walking with this person for a certain part of their journey, but I am not responsible. They are responsible for their life. And I can convey that trust to them that you've got this, and not take it on myself. I'm not saving anyone. I'm not, this is about me walking with them and helping them along this piece of their journey. But ultimately, they are the ones who do the work, and to kind of let them own their lives. And yeah, so emotional boundaries that's tough stuff, but it's training. It's a skill.
Yeah, you probably have had to develop that skill. So next question, just quick as we wrap it up. Are there any jobs, we talked about really having that master's and doctorate. Are there any jobs in, not a formal therapist, I guess, but in this area where you can, just have a bachelor's degree in something? So does anyone know? Is that a tough one? Megan or Cynthia?
I mean, to be a therapist, to be a licensed therapist, you have to have a master's degree. Yeah. But I've had a lot of students over the years trying to figure out, do I want to be a mental health professional? Doing other things. Wasatch Mental Health, for example, is a really good place to get your feet wet. I did. They had a respite program when I was an undergrad that I did, and it was like kids that were in therapy that had a lot of emotional and behavioral challenges. That we would take them once a week and do something with them so that their parents got some respite. And for me, that was a huge eye opener where I'm going, oh, this is the kinds of stuff that I'd be treating if I were working with kids in therapy. These are the kinds of things that I would be treating. I've known bachelor's level students who've done internships where they've been able to shadow therapists doing work, and kind of being able to watch therapists actually in therapy and get a feel for, is this something that I want to do? I think, experience in some kind of a behavioral health setting and agency is a really good, valuable experience. And a lot of times, if you have a bachelor's in social work, you can get a lot of that. You can get a lot of that experience just by virtue of some of the BSW jobs. There are a lot of those kinds of working at the Children's Justice Center, doing custody or visitation kinds of things where I've had a lot of students where when families do custody drop-offs, they're the or visitation drop-offs, they're there and they kind of have the feel of like, oh, this is what it's like working with a divorced family and some of the complications that go along with that. So I think there are definitely, again, not necessarily therapist jobs, but definitely things that will help you figure out, do I want to work with these populations, and what does a therapist job look like?
Great. And then Cynthia, many people have struggled themselves through their lives with some of the issues that you help people with, even these children. Can people who struggle themselves become therapists, and how would they do that?
I think that they do. I think many of us have experienced something that probably has altered the way that we walk through the world. I don't think a person, sometimes they say like psychologists or people that go into the mental health field have struggled with something. Absolutely. I think that it's very important for you as an individual to go through your own therapy. And make sure that you're really understanding, well, what is it that's making me react the way that I do, so that it doesn't come off in therapy, right? Because there are going to be people that are going to walk into your office that are going to trigger memories and experiences for you, and you have to be aware of your own stuff. So getting constant supervision and openly and vulnerably talking about those situations that you're like, I had this icky sort of maybe session with a family, and I need to see if I can get some support around that. So I think that making sure that you get your own therapy to manage some of your own stuff so that it's not showing up in your family sessions is really important.
Thanks to my guests, Megan, Julie, and Cynthia, for being just amazing as panelists today. And thanks to the Utah Education Network for their partnership on this series. And finally, to all of you listening, remember that you have so many career options out there. I encourage you to explore all these options, and then also consider your individual interests, your passions, your gifts, talents, and strengths as well. These, combined with a college university education, can help you prepare for an engaging and meaningful profession throughout your life. Thanks so much for joining us today.